and are designed to carry hot steel from furnace to furnace. Some of the steel will be used to make autos, so it's rolled into sheets, curled into coils, and carried by steel coil cars to the nearby auto plant. The steel coils are pressed into fenders, doors, hoods, trunks, and car roofs, all the steel parts needed to make an automobile. The completed cars are then loaded on auto rack cars and shipped to auto dealers all around the country. Auto rack cars have 2 tiers for trucks and 3 tiers for cars. Next time a train passes, see how many auto rack cars you can spot. Next, we see the Indiana Dunes and the South Shore Line commuter train. You actually would not go by the dunes on your way west, but the designers wanted to include this area because of its beautiful sand dunes and beaches, and because the South Shore Line is the last interurban electric operating in America. It travels between Chicago and South Bend, Indiana, and carries thousands of commuters to work in the morning and back home in the evening. In the fall, the South Shore Line also carries football fans from Chicago to Notre Dame games in South Bend. The real South Shore Line is powered by overhead electric wires called a catenary. This is a model of the station at Beverly Shores, Indiana, one of the stops on the South Shore Line's route. As we leave the congestion of the city, we approach the fertile farm fields of the northern plains. The rolling land is dotted with farmhouses, barns, tractors, and lots of crops growing. The big attraction in Prairie Town is the dinner train, headed by a vintage steam locomotive. These trains give people the opportunity to see a real steam engine and to ride in old-time passenger cars. Check out the downtown area. See if you can find Gene Kelly singing in the rain. Today, you only see steam locomotives on tourist railroads. But there was a time, not too long ago, when giant steam locomotives, like this Norfolk Western Class J and the Southern Pacific's Daylight, ruled the rails. People love to see the churning drive wheels, smoke pour from the stack, and hear the sound of the steam whistle. Farmers depend on the railroads to take their crops to market. These grain elevators are located west of Prairie Town near the lush farmlands. Farmers store their grain in these elevators. After the grain dries, covered hoppers roll under the elevators. Hatches are opened, and the grain drops into the hoppers. After loading, the train heads to processing plants in the U.S. or to shipping ports where the grain is loaded on barges and taken to countries all over the world. Covered hoppers protect their loads from the weather. In addition to grain, they are used to carry dry cement, sugar, and fertilizer. From Chicago, grain barges go down the St. Lawrence Seaway into the Atlantic Ocean for shipments to Europe. For grain headed to South America, the barges go down the Mississippi River. Trains carry grain to the West Coast for shipment to the Far East. Farmers prefer to move grain by rail because it's cheaper than moving grain by truck. That means less traffic on our highways and less pollution because we burn less gas. As we head west, the northern plains dissolve into the foothills of the Rockies. On real railroads, diesel units are lashed together to help pull long trains up the steep grades. Steep grades have also been built into this layout, and just like on the real railroads, additional powered units called helpers are needed to negotiate the grades. A tourist train, reminiscent of the Durango and Silverton in Colorado, rolls across the highest bridge on the exhibit. The bridge combines two types of bridges, a steel arch bridge and a deck truss bridge. The arch sections are based on the Stony Creek Bridge in British Columbia in Canada, and the deck sections are based on a bridge in Poughkeepsie, New York. Steam locos are powered by steam pressure, which is created by heating water over a coal or wood fire. Diesel locomotives are powered by a diesel engine that turns electric generators. The generators then power the motors that turn the wheels. Locomotives need service on a regular basis. This is the plain view shops, where a switcher and a burro crane help move the big diesels that stop for service. An interlocking tower controls the rail traffic, much like the control tower at the airport controls aircraft traffic. Since the exhibit has about 35 locomotives in action all day, every day, maintaining them is almost a full-time job. David Harrison is the man in charge. The idea is to keep the wheels clean and the axles lubricated. Dave uses a Katie wheel cleaner on the wheels and applies a light oil to lubricate the axles. A heavier grease is used on the gears. Just like on the real railroads, proper maintenance is crucial in keeping all the locomotives in good operating condition. Doug Drummond is in charge of operations. 3 trains, headed by 2 to 4 powered locomotives, operate on each main line. Once a train enters a block, the train following it on the same track cannot enter the block until that train that preceded it has left. There are 3 main lines and 10 signal blocks. This system of blocks, which is similar to the system real railroads use, prevents trains from running into each other. Designer John Llewellyn provided specifications on the block system.
As we were refining our design for the Great Train Story, we had to think carefully about how many trains we wanted to operate on this and how reliable we wanted it to be. Naturally, it has to be very reliable because it's running all day, every day for our visitors. So I had to come up with specifications with how many trains would be on each loop, where they should stop, if they should go back and forth on a single linear section, and how do we keep the trains from bumping into each other. We directed our engineers at SMART to come up with a plan for making this really work.
This enormous exhibit was built in sections at various off-site studios.
They were actually pretty good to work with considering they were so far away. I never even went to their shop. It was all over email and phone and sending drawings and stuff. They came up here quite a bit, but I never had to go down there. I would have liked to.
"11 access openings spotted at strategic places around the exhibit allow Doug and Dave to make repairs and clean the track on the inner portions of the exhibit. The designers of the layout used a stage technique known as compressed perspective. By shortening the depth of the buildings and the hills, the designers were able to create the illusion of a full-size city in a small space.
All the best stories kind of go into detail at certain points and then skip ahead in time sometimes, because if you tell everything that happened every single mile, it can get boring because there are some miles in there that don't really have much of anything of interest in them. So what we did to fit all of this landscape and panorama into our museum was to selectively compress the scenery. And selective compression is a stage designer's trick where you selectively compress things. You take the interesting parts, like for example the Michigan Avenue buildings in Chicago. You take that, you present that in full detail. The Chicago Loop, that's all in really good detail. And then as you work your way around the country, you get kind of a taste of the Great Plains, the High Plains, the Rockies. And the tough part is to show enough of it that people get it and know where they are without taking up too much space. So as a designer, I had to draw out a bunch of different alternative floor plans, and I kind of refined the design over a period of months in order to get that illusion to work. I even made scale models of our scale model exhibit, so you could imagine walking around it and plan where the sight lines are. You wouldn't want a mountain to be right behind the Sears Tower, because in real life it isn't like that. But we had to kind of fold things around to fit everything in.
After passing under the high bridge, the Empire Builder arrives at Mineral Springs, a small mountain town patterned after towns you'd see in Colorado, Montana, and Wyoming.
Now departing Amtrak's first-class service for Chicago, Illinois, via St. Paul, Minnesota. All aboard Track A.
There's an Amtrak station where folks can get off and go hiking, rock climbing, or visit their Aunt Millie